All right, so
Good.
I'm Matthew Cross, and I am the publisher of Hoshin Media, and I'm here with my great friend and author Greg Pashke, whose new book is 10 Hurdles. And we're going to spend a few moments today speaking about some of the key aspects that inspire Greg, the benefits for you, the reader, around this destined to become an instant classic for people, for leaders, for entrepreneurs, for CEOs, and all the rest. So, without further ado, welcome, Greg, today.
Thank you, Matthew. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure always to spend precious minutes together and discussing great ideas and things that can be put into practice. So let's dive right in with the seed. What was one of the key inspirational seeds that led you to create this instant classic?
Well, it was a Marshall Thurber seminar about a dozen years ago. And it was in Chicago, and I was cordially invited by a fellow business coach to come to the session. So I went there with limited expectations. I had not been exposed to Marshall before. And the power of those 2 days was remarkable for me. I was really impressed with the diversity of the crowd and the people that were there. We had people probably up to 50 years apart age-wise. We had people from all kinds of multi-disciplines. We even had a few folks that were from overseas. And it was just a nice, powerful session, and got to know people and some subject matter differently than I might have otherwise. It wasn't just your normal run-of-the-mill seminar. There was kind of a magic to it. And so I really enjoyed that. After that, I was just thinking about all the stuff that I was exposed to for 2 days. And I've always been a Ronald Reagan fan. And one of his observations that really kind of grabbed me at the same time was that entrepreneurs are basically the forgotten heroes of America, how powerful they've been in the development of our civilization and the wealth that we enjoy and the things that we really like. So that was the seed. It just started to mull back in there. Okay.
Hmm.
And I decided, well, I'll tell you what, how is the steps to take someone from being an entrepreneur to get to be a CEO of a reasonable size organization? Not many people can do that. And what are the obstacles they need to overcome in order to make that reality come true? So I just canvassed, different business coaches I knew, different, CEOs from a variety of different things, kind of assembled all their comments and thoughts together. And I culled it down to 10 hurdles that were basically the ones that seemed to have the most power from all the people that responded to me. And I wrote a brief article for Renaissance Executive Forum about that time, and it got published. And that's where it was for a while. Okay. And then during COVID, when I started to think about different aspects of different things in life, I read that article again and I said, I can maybe add some meat on the bone of this thing, okay,
Yes.
and really try to put together maybe some suggestions, some tips, some antidotes, ways to kind of give the entrepreneur the ability to come in and self-assess where they stand with these relative 10 hurdles, and to make a commitment to grow, and not only grow their organization, but obviously grow themselves, and try to have the attributes that are going to be necessary to really extend, the size and scope of the operation that they have. That's kind of the gist of it.
Beautiful. All right. So we've got the essential seed, the seed in place. How did you lock on to these 10 specific hurdles?
Well, those are the ones that had the most feedback from the people that I had inquired from. Okay. Those were the ones that seemed to dominate things. There were a lot of adjectives that were there for both roles. Okay. Whether they were insightful or inspirational, but these were the 10 that seemed to say these are the areas that you really need to expand your horizon. And these
Yes.
are you got a pathway to get from point A when you're an entrepreneur, and you got to get to the end when you're the CEO of a decent sized organization.
Yes.
And what are the obstacles you're going to face? Well, these are the 10 hurdles you've got to be able to clear in order to make that migration from entrepreneur to CEO.
Is it
And
is it fair to say, Greg, as well, that taking the I call it the eagle eye perspective, that hurdles they could also be viewed as opportunities, as gifts, once you clear
Absolutely.
them, in a sense.
Absolutely. You shouldn't be afraid of them. There's lots of examples over the years about times that were really challenging, but it stretches you and it expands your horizon and makes you rethink things. And that's sometimes can be very powerful on the plus side.
Perfect. All right. So let's dive in for a moment to the first hurdle. And in our earlier conversation, you were speaking about entrepreneurs being vibrant kind of people, but also people around accountability. Dive right in there around the first hurdle being discipline.
Well, it's interesting. I think discipline was really, again, it's number one from multiple aspects, but I think it kind of captures it well because, again, in the entrepreneur world, they're just doing things. They're out there busy, they're thinking, and they're just prone to action.
Yes.
But in order to advance your organization and yourself, you really need to add a lot more discipline in your life. And that's a challenge, okay? It's not only a challenge, to accomplish, but even just the way you approach things, okay? The next level of success has to come from discipline. And that's an arduous one to do, but one that's very, very, very important. And one of the things that we've talked about at different times, I've always kind of thought it was interesting that entrepreneurs love to hold other people accountable. Okay?
Yes.
And they do a good job at that. Okay. But for themselves, they don't like to be held accountable to anyone. Not that doesn't fit all of them, but it's an attribute that seems to arise quite a few times.
Uh-huh.
So for them, because they're self-assured, they want to control everything. But making themselves accountable to an advisory board of directors, or even their counsel, the people that consult with them, they don't always have that ability to add that additional discipline, and it's important. Okay, and they need to be able to accomplish that and do that. So that happens to be the one that was first on the list. Okay,
So
and also,
you start with self-accountability.
yes, well, yeah, exactly. And you have to self-assess where you are. So one of the things that the book uses is basically for each of the hurdles, you self-assess where you are. Okay, from a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. And you may find that some of the 10 hurdles, there might be 3 or 4 that you really are pretty good shape with. Okay. That he or she, you really fit well with that. You've done that and you've accomplished on that one pretty well. And there's
Yes.
going to be some that are marginal that you need to improve and you can improve. And there's some that maybe you've been hesitant. Okay. And they're the toughest ones sometimes because you can certainly go out and maybe hire or get some coaching to help you through some of those, but you can't abdicate those. Okay. You still
Yeah.
have to have, and that sometimes some small business people will run into that issue. Okay. They hire somebody to do something and really aren't effectively overseeing that. Okay. And so that's another thing you have to be careful of. And delegation kind of roles is one of the other hurdles that kind of ties in with that.
So taking a macro view of the hurdles and the concept, Greg, it's fair to say then again that this is a field book. This is a guidebook, a field book, a self-assessment tool. Like your previous book, Quotes and Ladders, this is a book that I, as an entrepreneur, would literally co-author, if you will. I get to write. I get to be a
Yeah.
writer here. I get to be challenged. I get to, probably most importantly, I get to shine some light potentially, almost definitely, on what are certain to be a few blind spots in my ability to be a better leader, be a better person, be a better leader, etc. Correct? Is
Yes,
that a fair
absolutely.
statement?
You framed it well. You
Awesome.
framed it well.
What for you in looking at the 10 hurdles, for you jump out as, for many people, blind spots? In other words, what are the 2 or 3 that really jump out to you, and in your research and thinking about the project, what are the 2 or 3 that really jump out to you as to be pretty big blind spots for many people?
Well, I think biases is one of the hurdles, and
Okay.
sometimes we realize that we have biases in certain direction, and sometimes we don't, or we choose to ignore them. Okay,
Yes.
but we have to realize those and accept those. If we have them, recognize which ones they are, and some of them might be good biases. Okay, but some of the ones that maybe are working against you, how do you mitigate those? How do you find ways to deal with those so that it doesn't impact or impede your ability to make the progression that you need to make? So that's one. And then the trusted advisors, I think, is another one. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So, you don't need to have a formal board of directors, under some the legal implications of that and
Well
all
put.
kinds of things. People
Well
don't
put.
do that. But there are advisory boards that you can put together.
Hmm.
And you can even join one of the CEO groups like Renaissance that really work with you to develop a lot of the things we're talking about. Okay.
Yes.
They really enhance your ability, and you kind of have a cadre of other people that are going along the same path as you that can kind of help you develop. Okay, so that's a nice touch. The other ones, 9 and 10. Nine's broaden perspective. Okay,
Yes.
thinking more broadly.
Yes.
Lots of times we have a tendency to operate in little silos that we're really good at. Okay, and not expanding or stretching ourselves. And you can get a little too specialized, but if you're going to be a CEO, you've got to have a little bit more of a generalist attitude and perspective. You've got to be able to know how the individual pieces fold together and make the company much bigger than the sum of its parts. Okay.
Yes.
You're looking at
Yes.
that for that synergistic thing. And then the future focus. You've
Hmm.
always got to be thinking ahead. Okay. And it's not always, it's got to be more than just the reactionary thing that you have a tendency to do if you're an entrepreneur. You're battling every day and day in and day out. But if you're going to really grow your organization, you need to have a future focus. You got to identify the future trends that are gradually evolving, where the market really kind of wants to pull you, and some of those steps that it wants to pull you is a great direction. Some of those might be warning signs that you need to be careful or understand what's going on. Those are a couple ideas that tie with what you suggested. The other one I like with Marshall, one of the quotes that he had too, he had, the less you know, the harder life is.
Yes.
And that's incredibly powerful. Okay. And a lot of times, again, entrepreneurs have a tendency to be real busy, but that's okay. But you need to be able to, again, have the discipline to try to say, okay, here's where I am in each of these hurdles, my
Yes.
self-assessment. Then I'm going to commit to get better. Well, how do I get better? And you're just putting together almost a journal, of where you are with each of the hurdles,
Hmm.
and track the progress. And if you can, hold yourself accountable to a coach or to a CEO group, some sort of way of some external monitor, try to kind of coach you or move you along. Okay, so
That's perfect. That's a great summary, Greg. It's a great summary. So another thought comes to me. Well, let me frame this thought from the perspective of training as an athlete.
okay,
So when I first
okay,
started running, for example, when I first like was exposed to the idea, and I was invited to try out for the track team at high school. And I never really imagined I'd maybe be able to run a mile nonstop. When I first had the idea of running, it's like, can I run a mile
sure,
nonstop? And then a few years later, I was running the Boston Marathon, right? So, I went from can I run a mile to I run a marathon. And so it seems to me that the same metaphor with hurdles would apply, and specifically with the metaphor of hurdles for the book. And that is that if you're going to start addressing hurdles, if you're going to start addressing blind spots, you're going to start with smaller hurdles. You're not going to have them be the Olympic height, let's say, at a track, right? You're going to maybe start with
right.
baby hurdles, like baby steps. So it
Yes,
occurs to me that the first pass, and tell me if this resonates with you, that I'd want to go through these almost with a beginning mindset and look at where I am today in discipline, hurdle number one, systems, hurdle number two, delegation, hurdle number three, and so on. Roll through these, self-assess, and get some progress, get some momentum, and then revisit at some point. Give me your thoughts on that.
well, I think that's a good approach. I mean, one of the things you can do is a reader can go through the 10, kind of just page through them kind of briefly. And there's some reflection questions on front of each of the hurdles. Okay.
Yes.
There's 5 questions, kind of stir your thinking and to get to you to kind of frame it, if you will, okay,
Yes.
about where you are and give you some ideas about things you need to address or think about. Okay. And then, And then the rest of the chapters are basically going to give you ideas and suggestions and comments that you might look at ways to develop or improve your ability to get over that hurdle. And I'm a big believer in adding a little tidbits of humor if you can. Okay.
Yes.
So maybe make a point, but tell it with a little bit of a funny story, but it has a point. Okay. And then certainly quotations, you know how I love those. Okay.
Of
But the point
course.
is to give you some development stuff along the way. But again, it should be fun. You should have some fun with this. And it could be a nice journal of your progress. And wouldn't it be really great 10 years from now when you're really running a really powerful organization to kind of pull out your old 10 hurdles books, your journal, and
Yes.
kind of note the progress that you made along the way. Okay. Where were you after 6 months? Where were you after 3 years? And it's a powerful way to document the history of your improvement in the history of the company. It's just something else that you might think about how to use the tool. So.
And Greg, is it fair to say that it's also never too late to start? Wherever you are in your business journey, in your entrepreneur journey, right? Knowing that some people are going to start right out of high school, before high school, others are going to start midway, some may be jumping in at age 70 or what have you, that the 10 hurdles are clearly timeless.
Absolutely. You go back to like Michael Dell was selling computers out of his dorm room in college. Okay.
Right. Yes.
And so yeah, there is no age limit. Then there's sometimes people that really, like you said, are late bloomers. They might. Ray Kroc didn't even start McDonald's until like he was 52 or 53,
yes.
Somewhere in his early 50s.
Yes.
So yeah.
Fascinating. Because when thinking about the Kroc story for a moment, did you see the film, by the way, on Kroc, McDonald's with Michael Keaton?
I did not, but I'm sure it's a great.
Highly recommend it. But I bring this in now because for those watching this, recommend the film. The title will come back to me. But his perspective was broadened by one of his advisors who said, Ray, you're not in the hamburger business. It's not about the profit you're going to make in the hamburger. You're in the real estate business.
Yes.
And that shift, which is absolutely broadened perspective, that came from an advisor. So you got two elements right here in your book that would directly support the success of what happened with McDonald's and Kroc.
Speaking. The other thing he did for his people that were his franchise folks, he made some of them millionaires before he made himself that. He was so focused on helping their individual businesses. He had the real estate aspect of that.
Yes.
But making money, if they were able to have big buys where they would buy stuff at a national level, he would pass all those savings on to the people that had the individual franchises. He didn't hoard that, didn't keep that back at the corporate headquarters. He shared it. Okay.
Powerful principle.
Well, and Dairy Queen did not do that. Dairy Queen kept, the buying power back at their headquarters, and they didn't pass on those savings to this anywhere near the same degree. So, I don't know if that's the reason why they never really developed anywhere near, but they were around actually before McDonald's was.
That's right.
They just never grew. Just one of the things that Kroc did. And also they used to say he would drive around McDonald's before he would go visit. And if he saw some cups or some stuff on the streets, he would always stop and pick it up, and then make that one of the responsibilities of the manager there to say, just police that so we don't get a bad reputation. We want to make sure that we're a welcome part of the neighborhood. Just some of the other things that he did. So
that's intriguing. I'm sure there's a connection on some level, because here in 2024, I've noticed too often to be a coincidence that there will be rose bushes planted next to Dunkin' Donuts, freestanding Dunkin' Donuts up here in New England. There'll be rose bushes, beautiful roses. And it's like, but it's a beautiful thing, but it's like, I don't necessarily think of Dunkin' Donuts and roses, but it's,
I like it.
It's an interesting piece. Excellent. So let me ask you a few spontaneous questions, just coming at it from a different angle, because these will be beautiful vignettes. So, Greg, what is it that calls you to share gifts like 10 hurdles like Quotes and Ladders with the world? What's calling you in? I mean, you're retired now, so
Yeah.
you're not in the game as much. So what's
Right.
calling you? What's driving you to share these gems?
Well, it's interesting. The 10 hurdles thing was during, again, COVID. I
Yes,
reread the original article I wrote for Renaissance, which again encapsulates the 10 hurdles, but it
yes,
doesn't go into them any great depth. But over the years, I've been blessed. I've written some articles and done some other things that when I was looking at it more depth, I says, boy, there's some stuff I could add meat on the bone, and a lot of stuff it's maybe from things I had written earlier or just from
yes,
life experiences and business experiences, just basically to share that, okay, and to kind of put them together in a format that I think really can help people move along the way. But it's just a way of giving back, okay. You
yes,
know, I certainly mentorship's been a big part of my life. When I was young, I tried to surround myself with people that really knew a lot, and I was like a human sponge, trying to learn as much as possible. And then you feel there's a responsibility, if you've been blessed and you've learned some things, just to kind of share that as much as you can and pass it on to the other people that might somehow benefit from that. And so it's just a commitment to give back, if you will. Okay. So,
perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect. Back to the origin seed, back to the, if you kind of trace it back to the root. So Marshall's seminar, which of
yes,
course is where you and I met,
yes,
international participants from all over the world, vast range of experiences and backgrounds, and even an age range, as you pointed out. And in many ways, this is going back over a dozen years, that tracks down to today. You and I
yes,
connected to that seminar, but it also planted a seed as well. It started some gears turning in a new way. The particular seminar with Marshall, and as we know, Marshall's been one of those. I call him a Forrest Gump, or like Oz behind the curtain. He's been such a catalyst and an inspiration and a mentor to Tony Robbins and Bob Kiyosaki and yourself, myself, etc. So in a very direct way, there's a link there with a man who's really touched the world through his teachings and his commitment. And now here you are, in a sense, passing on the torch, passing the baton of perspective and the knowledge that you've accrued in your life through these 10 hurdles.
yes. And one of the things too that Marshall did, again, he does that really, really well. He can give you a broadened perspective on almost anything that applied to everybody in the room.
Yes,
It gives you a lot of what I'll call more or less generalist observations, but they're very powerful. And he gets people to think about things. And one of the other exercises I know we did that was interesting too, because we had such a diversity of people. I think it was like 30 seconds to talk to a person, then you move the chairs around the room. So you got to talk to somebody for 30 seconds and they talk to you for 30 seconds. But even that little exercise with the variety of people that were in the room was really powerful. I really learned a lot, and I think it brought the group together, uh,
yes.
and in an interesting way. So it was again part of his magic. But
I remember it well. It was like musical chairs where we literally you had 30 seconds to share your inspiration, what brought you there, something key about yourself. And then I had 30 seconds. And
yes,
so between us, we had a minute, but you had 30, I had 30, and there was a chime, as I remember. There's a timer. So it was very precise. And then we moved, we switched chairs, and you and I got to meet. There were at least 75, maybe 100 people, I think 75 people at least. But in a very short amount of time, we got to meet and connect meaningfully
yes,
for seconds, but it counted face to face with every single person in the room. And how often do you go to a party? How often do you go to a networking event and you're hoping and praying, maybe I'll connect with one, two, or three, or four people, right? But
right,
not meaningfully get an assessment of everyone in the room. And then, I want to follow up with that person before the end of the day, right?
yes,
And
yeah,
so let's take that right into the book. It just occurs to me, of course, what you've done here, if you've created 10 musical chairs, 10 hurdles, you get the ability to sit meaningfully and to engage with these critical facets on the diamond of personal development, leadership development, and obviously contribution to the development of an organization. We get to play that same game, if you will, with these 10 critical musical chairs, these hurdles.
yes. Yeah, it's interesting. So,
Super. Okay. Okay, we'll circle all around. Is there anything else? What is there one other element, Greg, that you would share for the reader, whether it's specific or general, as to the benefit of going through this self-assessment tool with the 10 hurdles framework?
I really think that the desire and the commitment to grow and to develop yourself, not only as to get to the CO level, not only that progression, but individually to kind of expand your horizon and make a commitment to grow and development. You're basically trying to say, I accept the responsibility I have to kind of grow this business. Okay. And I'm surrounding myself with great people that are going to help me along this path. Okay. But it's a call to action, if you will. Okay.
Yes.
You're making it more important than just you. Okay. You're accepting the role that you're the chief development officer, if you will. And you're
put.
going to not, yes, and just be able to kind of grow and develop it, not only yourself, but the people that are around you, and serve the public, whatever endeavor you're in, and it's just, again, just a commitment to expand and grow and development, and just enjoy life and to its fullest, if you will.
Love it. So in many ways, it's a primer for your parallel role as a GAD, Growth and Development Officer, essentially.
Yes.
You have to be your own growth and development officer, as well as whatever other title you have. Entrepreneur in general, you've got to be your own growth and development officer.
Yes. Yeah, and just enjoy it. It's a role that you accept and embrace, and undertake and do it. Okay. So
awesome. Okay, we'll reframe that one. And then I got another one. And how's your time, by the way?
I'm okay.
Beautiful.
I'm still okay for a little bit.
We go another 5 minutes or so, and we got it. We got that. These are the sorts of vignettes. These are the sorts of beautiful, poignant. I'm generally noticing we're doing 2 to 3 to 4 minutes, but they're perfect because I can cut them out, boom, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Let me come at it from another angle. Greg, I've been researching a lot. Greg, I've been researching flight disasters and flight miracles recently. And I've come upon a handful of stories, but they all speak to the critical importance of a checklist. An airline pilot, for example, all airline pilots run through the same checklist before they take off, right? Yeah. And it's a paper checklist, right? And they go through it. And when they're sitting with their co-pilot or their advisor, they're cross-checking each other. Okay, did you check that? Did you check this, et cetera? Is it fair to say that 10 hurdles is that checklist for a successful flight, using the metaphor of one's career?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it fits well. It's certainly the discipline part of it right off the bat. Having the discipline to have the checklist. Okay. They're not, they serve a very important role, and it's going to be interesting now with even the world of artificial intelligence as it migrates and moves on, whether that'll be adjusted in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, but really the checklists are powerful. I still use it. I got one in my kitchen with stuff that I track every day. It's just a powerful metaphor of controlling the steps in your life. It's important. If it's important enough, get it on the checklist, and you're almost honoring the checklist, if you will, by going through that every time. It's not superfluous because it keeps you from missing something.
Yes.
And that's important.
Yes.
That's important.
Yes. There's that wonderful saying, and this was a favorite of Marshall's as well, that and I believe it tracks back to Will Rogers, it's not what you don't know that can hold you back or can kill you. It's what you do know that is not so. So it's those, as you said, those biases, the paradigms, the mindsets that we have that blind us many times from seeing the real opportunities and or the real hurdles that could trip us up.
Okay. Yeah. What for sure that just ain't right is
yes.
That can get you in some trouble real quick. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, last one. All right, Greg. Let's see. I've got your book in hand. I'm ready to go. are there any other last thoughts before I dive in, Greg, to the reader as they dive into 10 hurdles? What would you share at the beginning of the reader's journey, of my journey?
I think on the first page of each of the hurdles, okay, there's 5 reflection questions about
Yes.
that particular hurdle. I think that's a great way to start. If you think through those 5 questions,
Yes.
it'll kind of frame your whole mindset for that particular chapter. I think those are powerful. It'll start to stir, some of your thoughts and some of your prior experiences, and it kind of just sets the stage, if you will, for how you're going to deal with that particular hurdle. So those reflection questions, I think, are very important and a great way to
Excellent.
start with each hurdle.
Excellent. Have you given thought to, and would you suggest it's an option to do this with a partner, to do this with an advisor or maybe a partner in business or someone to actually go through this and have that ping pong? Have you given that thought?
Well, I think it fits well with an external advisor. I
I
mean,
was going to say,
even using Renaissance again as an example, but there's other organizations like that. Okay,
yes,
if you're working with those groups, part of what they do is develop a lot of these particular things. Okay, and so it's just a good way of it keeps you accountable. Again, back to we were talking about earlier.
yes, yes.
So it helps make you more accountable if you're reporting to somebody that you respect and is trying to help you. It's just a good way of, and add that to your checklist that you do. When's the last time I talked to my business coach and told them about where I think I'm going and how much progress or a little progress I'm making, trying to deal with the different hurdles that are impacting me. Okay. Because sometimes having someone else you report to, again, can keep you motivated. If you're accountable,
yes, yes.
it adds more discipline. That's basically what.
Yeah, more discipline, more accountability, and the ability, there's a necessity there to also be open, vulnerable, even, right,
Yeah.
to what can sometimes be bitter medicine. Got to be able to hear where you might be misfiring or not seeing or not doing your best or what the case might be. You got to be open to that. It's just like having a good coach, right?
What is, I think, one thing to even think about in the beginning, and there's 10 hurdles and we have a self-assessment for each one of them.
Exactly.
Just put them all together. Say day one, when you go through that, you say, here I am, on all the 10 hurdles, here's where I am. And you share that with your coach or your outside advisor. And then you start to make commitments that, in a month, I'm going to be working on this particular one, that particular one. And that might be a great way to kind of frame it, if you will, about your not only specific progress, but your collective progress with each of the hurdles that you're trying to overcome. So.
Perfect. Perfect. And I'll say on the side that we're literally in the final run up. We're in the final months maximum to getting this book live. And I am very excited to doing the actual process myself and to be reporting on it. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be diving into, Greg. This will be a bit unusual, which I'm going to be sharing my few minutes of vignettes as I go through each of the 10, right?
Oh, wonderful.
And I'm going to be sharing those with the audience as well, because I think that's going to add another perspective, right? I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get in there because I'm excited. I'm excited looking at the 10 that you presented here. And I know there's gold here, as well as some wonderful blind spots to shine some light on.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.